Okay, so now we're going to get to Herzberg's theory. What does it suggest? And that was also part of your motivation in our company paper. So the essence here is that Herzberg posited that there are two factors that influence satisfaction and dissatisfaction in the workplace, and they're independent. So you could actually be satisfied and dissatisfied at the same time. Now the key, the biggie here for Herzberg is the motivation factors. These are the most important factors to be present in the workplace because they, quote, motivate people. The hygiene factors, or what are called dissatisfiers, are things that if absent if they are there, will bug people and make them dissatisfied. But the presence of them does not necessarily make them motivated, just baseline, it just meets their baseline expectations. Let me get to the hygiene factors a little bit more first. There's a really good analogy of a trash can, the trash garbage collection, and hygiene factors. So here's the idea. When you leave your trash out and somebody picks it up each week, do you jump up and down and get thrilled and want to do a cartwheel and go do work? No. You expect your trash to be picked up during the week. So it doesn't do anything to actually motivate you. But if the trash garbage collector stopped picking up your trash, you would be angry / dissatisfied, and that would be harmful. So the idea is that in the workplace, that your boss should be looking at these things and notice their working conditions, security status, supervision, and interpersonal relations. Now what's interesting is these are somewhat akin to or aligned with Maslow's lower hierarchy of needs levels. So, like for example, working conditions, security, and status are intended to meet those base security and physiological needs. And then look, the love and belonging needs very much fit with interpersonal relations and supervision. Now, what's interesting about this is Herzberg suggests that just because you have good relationships in the workplace doesn't make you necessarily motivated. It may well mean that you're satisfied and not discontent within your organization, but you're not going to jump up and down and do more work. What really makes you motivated is the presence of these motivation factors. So your boss should be most interested, if she wants to motivate you, in ensuring that these are present in your job or in the actual organizational context. So she should think, okay, for example, am I recognizing you? Meaning you, the unmotivated one. Is there an opportunity for achievement within your particular position? Is there an opportunity for advancement, for growth, for further responsibility? And notice that a lot of these fit very much with job design because the nature of the work itself is the way the job is designed. The responsibility inherent in that job, that has to do with job design. Advancement, it's the next job. So, for example, she might find that you're very concerned because you don't know what your career path might look like if you're hired at this company full time. And you're actually concerned if you're going to be able to, quote, advance to a full-time position. So by working with you to help you understand, yes, when you graduate from Queens, I would like to hire you as a, say, research analyst. That would be much more motivating. But just because she has a good relationship with you, for example, doesn't mean that you're necessarily motivated. She should look at these things, however, and think, can I actually further motivate you, him, her? So, for example, if she's a bad boss, if she's a poor supervisor, you may well be dissatisfied as a result, so she has to rectify that. So as a baseline, you're not unhappy or unsatisfied. Okay, now next we're going to get to something, well, I won't announce it for a minute here. I want you to ponder this. I think people are either A, lazy by nature, or B, not lazy by nature, meaning very energetic naturally and prone toward doing things. I gave you a really big scale here. So you're thinking, it's a fill in the blank. I think people are lazy or not lazy, self-directed and energetic. Now, most people fall somewhere, not surprisingly, in the middle. And I think, to be sure, it's not this easy to simplify. I think that it's not categorically that people are lazy by nature or not lazy for most people, but I'm trying to simplify this. There's a lot of context, but I am simplifying. So what this is theories X and theory Y. So theory X is a set of assumptions that people hold. So for example, your manager might hold about you and other people in the workplace. So if you are a theory Xer, that means you think that people are generally fairly lazy by nature. Whereas if you think that people are not lazy by nature, that they're very energetic, that they'll be self-directed, you're a theory Yer. Now let me get more to the history of this. So X and Y are personal assumptions about others that influence how they motivate. They have implications for how your manager may be motivating you. So arguably, this is a manager-focused theory. She can think about the assumptions she holds and how she may be affecting you. So let me give you a little bit of brief history here. Think of this as time, going from left to right over here. The traditional model of managerial approach to motivation had this basic notion. This was, by the way, this traditional model held back in like the late 1800s, the early 1900s. The idea of the traditional model is people are pretty lazy. They're pretty lazy, they won't really do work unless you really push them, and as a consequence, there are certain things that must be done to make sure people are motivated to do their jobs. So the manager's basic task is to closely supervise and control people, because otherwise they won't do it, because they're lazy. Tasks must be broken down into simple, repetitive, easily learned operations, because people are too lazy and they don't want to learn on their own, and very firm work routines and procedures must be enforced, created and enforced, because that will get people in the spirit of punishment if they don't do their job to do their jobs. So it was very theory X. And again, this dominated the landscape until the 1930s-ish. So people were just considered cogs in the wheel, and it wasn't like managers thought, wow, let's involve people in the process of making decisions, or let's empower them to do things on their own. So people were little cogs in the wheel. This all kind of changed around the 1930s. There was a study done in the 1930s called the Hawthorne Studies. It involved a group of women working in the workplace in a manufacturing setting. The researchers came in and they basically said, we are going to watch you do work and take note of that. And the researchers had several hypotheses around workplace conditions. For one, they wanted to find out whether lighting in a room would affect motivation. So their theory was, well, if it's lighter in a room, that's happier, it's more conducive to people being productive. So what they did, they told these women, they were part of a research study, they watched their baseline performance in terms of their productivity and their tasks, and then they just watched them. And they changed the lighting. So the lighting was set at, say, whatever it is, reasonably dim. And then over time, they raised the lighting so that it was lighter. Now what they found was over time, the women's productivity increased. So they thought, wow, genius. This means that if we just have lighter factories, people will be more motivated to work. They had to test their counter hypothesis. So they ended up turning down the lights and then assumed that the women wouldn't work as hard. Contrary to that, they found that indeed these women were working just as hard, if not harder, and their productivity continued to go up. They did this with a number of organizational context matters or factors. And at the end of the day, they were thinking, well, why did this happen? And so why did the women continue to get more and more productive over time in spite of us changing the conditions from, say, better to worse, at least upon our theory? And the women were interviewed, and they said, you know what? The biggest reason that we were more productive is because this was the first time we've ever been singled out and paid attention to in the workplace. So what they found was, nowadays we think, oh, well, really, is that mind-blowing? But back then it was not mind-blowing because it was the first time people were thought of as human beings, not just cogs in the wheel. So this shifted toward this theory Y consideration, that maybe people are more self-directed and energized than we actually thought they were. So the shifting model was that the manager's basic task is to make people feel useful and important, that people should be allowed some sort of self-discretion and control over their own environment, and that the manager should keep the people involved and ask for their concerns and objections. Again, the idea being that people were not just cogs in a wheel, and they'd be more motivated if they felt useful and important and allowed to work with some discretion. Now, this has evolved even more into what's called the human resources model. And the basic idea is that most of us are capable of much more in the workplace than we are allowed to contribute. And so, when you think about that, think about the jobs you're in now. You may be in jobs where not even a fraction of what you're capable of doing is being asked of you. So this human resources model, which is also based on Theory Y, is that a manager's basic job is to make use of untapped potential in each and every one of us. And so the manager should create an environment where people can contribute to the limits of their ability, and they should be afforded a lot of autonomy, self-discretion. Now, this theory X and Y fits very much with our growing understanding of these other motivational models, because what this suggests is that people do want autonomy. They want to have significant tasks. They want a variety of tasks, and they have a whole lot more to contribute. So if your manager, for example, has been treating you, the Theory X is often considered to be associated with what's called micromanagement. You've probably heard of the term, where the manager really controls the employees, watches them very closely, makes sure things are simple, oversees them to such a degree that it's stifling. So it may well be that your manager needs to think about her philosophy toward how people go about work. Maybe she's stifling you. Maybe she is not giving you enough discretion. Maybe she's not creating the opportunity for you to contribute more because she has just assumed that you're going to do the very basic. And really, she should be considering, again, how to get more toward this human resources model by allowing you more discretion, more opportunity to learn, more opportunity to take on tasks of meaning. Let me pause one more time for our final video.